publicity stunt landed the Spider-Man in a web of trouble.
Police captured a man known as the French Spiderman.
Well, they're calling him Spiderman, the man who can climb anything.
In Chicago's Sears.
Spiderman has struck again.
Alain Robert.
Pricestoval pavúči muž Alain Robert, ktorý sa holými...
Alain Robert, good to have you here. Just
Alain Robert was wearing a Spiderman.
At close to 46 years old, Alain Robert is one of the most celebrated climbers in the world. He holds titles in solo climbing that are still unequal to this day. But this Spider-Man is also an exceptional person, a risk-taker who lives his passion beyond the extreme, facing death all alone. He's still a little boy whose passion has become his philosophy of life.
One day I happened to see a film, The Grieving Snow, from a novel by Henry Troya. It's a story of two brothers, mountain guides, who search for potential survivors. It was the first time that I saw human beings climbing. I was 8 years old, I was watching TV, and I saw something that seemed incredible. At that very instant, I said to myself, I'm going to become a climber. At the time, I was living in Valence, and I'd never paid any attention to the incredible cliffs right next to our house. But from that moment on, they became my fight, my childhood dream. One day there was this incident. Both my parents were working, I'd left my keys at home, and at that time we lived on the 8th floor. I found myself at the bottom of the wall. I really wanted to climb the building, but I was afraid. I looked at the facade and I said to myself, it's possible. And then I took off. I was no longer the little Alain Robert who was afraid of everything. I became Zorro, I became Robin Hood, at one with my childhood heroes. For me, climbing was absolutely fascinating, and this boyhood dream, fueled by my accidental adventure, has shaped the rest of my life.
His adventures were not without some serious mistakes. When he was 20 years old, at his full height of 5 feet 5 inches, he suffered a terrible accident on the cliffs of Cornas. A badly tied knot unraveled while he was rappelling down the cliff, and he fell 50 feet. The fall caused his wrists to explode, and his head struck a rock.
What this represents is the perception of someone with rotational vertigo. It is a real vertigo and not a fear of heights. People call vertigo a fear of heights, a height phobia, but in fact, it's this, a rotation of the visual field.
Following a series of falls, he was condemned to never climb again. He spent 10 years in doctors' offices with no pronosupination, epileptic fits, and chronic vertigo. His doctors declared him to be 66% disabled. He would spend those 10 years proving to the medical world that being human can cast certitude in doubt.
These are his wrists?
Left wrist. My left wrist is really very damaged. Here there were bone fractures and I just broke it again.
It's what you were explaining to me. It gave me a jolt when you explained that now when you break a fall, you use your head and not your hands.
I've fallen 7 times, but I've got no memory of the most serious accidents, when my head hit the rocks. Perhaps that's why I can start again so easily. That is, I'm not someone who is subject to nightmares and who continually sees himself falling, who keeps mulling over painful times, because I have no image of those times. I can't even talk about them. They didn't exist.
Thanks to his extraordinary mental strength, 1 year after his first accident, he was climbing again. After a few more years and 7 more accidents, Alain Robert became the best solo climber in the world and contributed to climbing's image as an extreme sport, a practice free of all constraints. In 1991, Patrick Edlinger, the president of the Festival de Janssen, gave him the prize for sports performance. 2 years later, he received the prize of the International Olympic Committee for Athletic Performance. And the same year, he won the world record for difficulty in solo climbing in the Grand Canyon du Verdon.
He's the most successful climber in the world. Edlinger had already succeeded, but Alain is the best, because he's known the world over.
What I did on the rock, I did very well, very professionally. I made a lot of progress over 20 years. I achieved goals I was passionate about, alone, and then I moved on to other things. I started climbing skyscrapers, and that triggered the same passion.
In the past few years, the man known as the real Spiderman has become famous for his illegal climbs and his arrests. The public doesn't realize that some of his climbs are for humanitarian purposes. Every time he climbs, he sends a message to the planet. He's climbed more than 100 skyscrapers, including the 5 tallest towers in the world. Taipei 101 was the first.
When Taipei 101 was being built, several people were killed, and it ended up having a reputation for being jinxed. So it was a little bit out of superstition and also to exorcise the curse that the president of the tower asked me to come and climb it. But he didn't want to take any chances and insisted that I climb with a rope. The day of the climb, the weather was absolutely awful. There was a gale force wind of 8.7 and it was raining constantly. So when I began the climb, things were really borderline.
Is he crazy? I mean, what is he doing? He's trying to climb a Taipei 101. What is wrong with this guy? He looked at it, decided he can do it, even though it is probably going to be one of the greatest challenges of his solo climbing career. As he gets past floor 34, the building becomes a particular challenge because of the angle of the building, but also because of the weather conditions today. He has to completely use the strength of his hands to grasp the metal ledges. Originally, the climb was going to take about 2 hours. Because of today's weather conditions, it could take him up to 3 hours. 这个我们所有的现场的媒体的朋友们，大家特别辛苦了，可能要多等一段时间了。不过呢，这个 one of the hardest portions of this climb, of course, is from floor 27 to 34. 那刚才超过1/3，我们给他一个热烈的掌声。He has already surpassed the 34 mark. One of the hardest portions of this climb, of course, is from floor 27 to 34. 他刚才，哇，给他一个掌声。All right, Alan. 一个角度了。
A building still covered in plastic, terrible weather, a security rope, and in diminished physical condition due to a fall 2 weeks earlier while filming a TV show. All this would make him suffer more than usual.
From 66 to around the 74th floor, that will take him up to 323 meters. 哎，好精彩哦！
这是从100楼户内照出去的啊，从室内照出去的镜头。
哎，站好，现在才剩下8公尺。Alan, the French Spider-Man, has already reached the 500-meter mark. There are only 8 meters to go. He has come to Taiwan to challenge what is known as, what is currently the tallest building in the world in our very own Taipei City. 这样会很累，但是他走得很慢，没关系啊。
The day after the climb, Asia was hit by one of the most violent tsunamis in history, which swept away the news of his achievement.
Alain Robert, the French Spider-Man, who has climbed what is now the tallest building in the world, Christmas 2004, and he is the man! All right. The man who has just climbed the tallest building in the world. It was raining, it was cloudy, it was slippery, it was wet, it was cold, it was windy, and he still did it, 508 meters tall. Taipei 101 here in Taipei, Taiwan. It is Christmas Day 2004. He has given us an incredible present. Let's, if we get a chance, Alan, can we have you sign this, which was at the top of the tallest building in the world?
I would like to give a message of peace for the world of, you know, I feel a little bit, well, there is some emotion, and it's a bit difficult for me to tell you exactly, but I would like so much for all the humanity, and I feel that there is a part of the answer on the top of Taipei 101.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Today, the Petronas Towers of Kuala Lumpur are the second and third tallest in the world. In 1997, when Alain illegally scaled the first tower, they were the two tallest. After what was for him an easy climb, he found himself arrested at the terrace of the 62nd floor. He spent a little time in detention and afterwards was received by the King of Malaysia. The media impact was tremendous and took Alain's young career as a climber to new horizons. Several months later, the Sabah Foundation of Borneo asked him to climb their large building. The authorities gave permission, and 15,000 people came to watch his ascent. This event earned Alain 150,000 euros and was the genesis of his involvement with good causes. 10 years later to the day, thanks to an American patron, Alain tackled the second tower. Although he knew the building very well, the path he chose caused him a few problems that slowed down his climb. That made it easy for the security detail to prepare him a welcome. This time, Alain's climb became a media sensation, thanks to mobile phones and internet sites that relayed videos of his climb all over the world. However, he was arrested again at the same floor as he had previously, and so for Alain, the climb was a failure.
One day, someone asked me to climb a skyscraper. It's true that in the beginning, I thought it was a completely crazy idea. But after having traveled to big cities such as New York, Chicago, Dallas, and Houston, I realized that some of these buildings were climbable, and it gave me a taste for something different. That's when I started to discover travel, to realize there were other things in life, meeting new people, learning a new language.
Comme rencontrer les gens, comme apprendre une nouvelle langue.
Since then, Alain Robert has traveled the world in search of new urban Everests to conquer. Hong Kong, Sydney, Caracas, New York, Paris, Singapore, Frankfurt. Alain realized that all skyscrapers are constructed along the same principles, and he became an expert in towers and tall buildings. With the agreement of the authorities, he chose La Défense, just outside Paris, as his training camp.
This is my playing field, La Défense. And what's nice is that since my last visit, new mountains have cropped up. There's Mazar, I'd never seen it. And I see that they've completely dressed up the Ariane Tower, which was one of my goals. I'm always happy to see the Areva Tower again, which was called the Framatome back when I climbed it. For the 110-floor Sears Tower, it took me 5 trips to Chicago to conquer the most difficult skyscraper I've ever climbed.
In August of 1999, he scaled the Sears Tower, for which he had meticulously prepared at La Défense. It made Alain into a superstar in the United States. He made the news across the country, accompanied by the inseparable companions of his urban ascents, his attorneys.
Well, they're calling him Spiderman, the man who can climb anything.
Alain Robert joining us in the studio this morning with his attorney, what every good building climber needs, George Andrews.
Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. Alain, thank you for coming in.
The Areva Tower has the same structure as the Sears Tower in Chicago. At the time, it was called the Framatome, and I found it extremely difficult. But the Sears Tower is 2.5 times the height of the Areva. I was experienced in climbing towers 650 feet high, but you're traveling into unknown territory with a tower 1,500 feet high.
To climb a wall made of glass and steel, Alain uses the vertical cracks or dilation joints that cross the facades from the base to the summit. Since they're man-made, they're often irregular, comparable to the rocks of Utah or Colorado. Alain climbs by locking his toes and the ends of his fingers in a crack, and then pushes himself up by twisting his feet while his fingers scrape along the exterior. This type of climb, where the body's center of gravity is stretched out along the surface of a building, is very physically demanding because there's no horizontal hold. But this is only possible by reducing the distance between the hands and the feet. On many other skyscrapers, there's nothing but the framing around the windows that he pinches or hooks with the fingers, while at the same time his feet are pressed against the glass. He's then able to slide up quickly in order to reach the horizontal part of the framing. There are also buildings where Alain must climb with his arms and legs spread out, using one beam on the right and the other on the left, while his feet push on the same beam while he's gripping it. The towers have varying difficulty according to the distances between the beams or cracks and the material used, which is sometimes very slippery. Alain uses all these techniques on other structures, such as bridges, even if he has to improvise sometimes as he adjusts to the technical differences.
Despite how easy this tower is to climb, Jin Mao is still the 5th highest tower in the world. So I decided I'd indulge myself by climbing it wearing a Spiderman costume. Once at the top, I gave myself 45 more minutes of freedom by descending the tower, for a total of 2,600 feet of climbing, 176 floors.
This climb, organized for an English television film, cost him 8 days in jail, and he was prohibited to return to China for 5 years.
It's impressive to see what he does. I'm happy to see him in person.
Alain's climbs all draw enormous crowds of support. But when he returns home to the south of France, he finds the calm and serenity of his original childhood experience of climbing. Here he shares his life with his wife and 3 children, the internet that allows him to stay in contact with his fans, as well as to prepare his future adventures, and then the training on his climbing wall that covers his bedroom ceiling.
This allows me to train whenever I feel like it, even several times a day. You're always upside down, and so you have to keep holding on. With the better holds, you need to allow yourself to stop, to recuperate, to breathe. People see me as a free man, because at the end of the day, even the authorities don't really bother me. I'm ready for new goals, even knowing that I'm risking a jail sentence.
For the past 15 years, Alain has done time in jail and has learned the workings of judicial systems around the world. He's become a celebrity outlaw whose fan base keeps on growing.
Alain Robert questions society. How far can society allow him to go? When he climbs, he's expressing himself. It's freedom of expression. Is society capable of letting him express himself? And when society judges him, it must consider who he is. Alain is a consummate professional, someone unique who delivers a message. That is the question he's asking.
At the summit of the towers, the welcome is more or less cordial. In Japan in 1998, after having provoked the police a little during a first attempt to climb, he was beaten and expelled from the country after spending a week in prison.
Life for me is a game. It has to be a challenge. It has to be hard to attain, and it has to be a little risky. That adds something to life.
His frequent arrests and time in jail have never discouraged him. On the contrary, they comprise an additional challenge and provide encounters that add something to his climbs, which are sometimes technically a little too easy for him. If at the beginning of his career as an urban climber, the United States was his primary climbing terrain and the country where his taste for risk was most appreciated, the 9/11 bombings of the World Trade Center, however, obliged him to seek new horizons. The United Arab Emirates, Dubai, this little emirate is at the end of its oil resources and has invested everything in tourism and skyscrapers. They're making there what will become in 2009 the tallest building in the world, Burj Dubai.
Everyone knows that I usually climb illegally, but here for the past 4 years I've done them the favor of climbing legally, which is pretty nice.
It's Abu Dhabi, Dubai's neighboring emirate, much richer in oil, that asked Alain to climb there.
I thought that because I had climbed Abu Dhabi legally with the support of the Minister of Education, that it would be easy to obtain permission for a similar operation here in Dubai. I even met the Prime Minister, who at that time was the owner of Burj Arab. Many people tried to obtain permission, but we never managed to get it. My life isn't worth much in Abu Dhabi, while apparently it's worth a lot in Dubai. Well, it's not about my life. It's primarily the negative publicity that a climb with a bad ending would generate.
This is the third time Alain has been invited by the Minister of Education to come to Abu Dhabi to inaugurate the newest, tallest building in the city, the ADIA building. He spent 3 days examining the building and planning this difficult climb. This climb, like the preceding ones, marked the opening of the event organized by the non-governmental organization, Education Without Borders, which gathers 600 students and professionals from over 100 countries.
Imagine.
In this event, Alain shared his taste for challenge with world business leaders and was asked to lead conferences and debates on themes such as self-confidence, success, and persevering in face of a handicap.
These people are sharing ideas with the students, and I think that the fact that I'm doing a climb helps them to understand that we're living in a world where we can still take personal initiatives.
Well publicized, Alain's climb of the ADIA building took place before a crowd of 150,000 people.
avant d'attaquer une ascension,
Before beginning a climb, I'm alone in the world. I know that I'm going to have to manage a lot of situations that will be complicated and dangerous. In a way, I close myself off. I don't know exactly what I'll do. I know what I'm getting into. I know that it can be very difficult, even fatal.
très difficile, voire quelque chose de mortel.
At this moment of the climb, Alain encounters an unexpected difficulty. Despite having carefully examined the building, 3/4 of the way up, he's surprised by a variation in the size of the facade tiles. At this height, the least doubt can be fatal. He's cheered on by the crowd, but above all, thanks to his uncommon mental fortitude, Alain is able to find a solution and continue his ascent.
When I arrive at the summit, all the tension leaves, releases. I really feel as if I've lived a small death and am instantly reborn.
In the name of Allah, this man is possessed. He is superhuman. May God protect him.
At the start, I was pretty much someone who climbed alone in his corner. I was fairly shy and undemonstrative, so to have 100,000 or 150,000 people watch me climb is really something. Africa, for me, that was... To climb in Johannesburg, that was something really fascinating. I felt people's admiration. I saw something in people's eyes in Johannesburg. It's a country that really fascinates me.
It's crazy, but he's done it a few times.
You know, this guy has done it so much, and I've just invited him to come to Soweto for the children of Soweto to see. Now he is in our city in Johannesburg. We hope and we trust that the people of the Gauteng will benefit to say, hey, we got someone of importance in our city.
No one can do that. No one. I think it's magic, Sam. I think so.
It's unbelievable, really. Can't do it. He's clever.
No, he's clever.
No, he's very clever. He's very clever. Clever.
And would you do that?
No, it's unbelievable.
Climbing the IBM tower was really difficult. There's only one vertical opening running from the base to the top, no horizontal hold, and so I had to climb with a certain rhythm, not too fast or too slow. But in the end, there's always this satisfaction of reaching the summit, of being alive. That's magical.
It was very difficult for me because the metal is very thin and it cut my foot, the left and the right.
Alain organized this climb in Johannesburg without the support of a sponsor, just to do it and to meet the people there.
My dreams are challenges, the unattainable. Sometimes it's very difficult, but it's still a game. It's still something. Getting a kick out of what I do is vital.
Whether his climb has a sponsor or he does a climb to thank an old friend such as Gilles Ménétré here in Barcelona, Alain puts everything into his work in order to share his passion with the greatest number of people.
When I climbed this tower, I carefully chose the time of day when people were leaving work, around 6 p.m., and so there was a huge crowd. The tower is in the center of a large traffic circle, and several thousand people gathered who followed my climb with a lot of interest. My climb stirred up the crowd. But they stirred me up as well because I could feel the positive vibrations of the public. These people pushed me to climb to the top and also to climb down because I had to go back down the tower. But I didn't have the sense that they were there hoping to see an accident. On the contrary, I felt a very positive energy.
Alain, how was it? How was it? Just tell me. Just tell me.
During a climb, I become a little like the Terminator. I become a climbing machine because in a way I program myself. I program myself for my goal. That's why I failed in my climb in Houston. In Houston, I was no longer in control of my thoughts. I had decided that I was going to climb, and I had forgotten that I could change my way of thinking and tell myself, stop, there are too many policemen. Wait an hour, wait 2 hours, wait for tomorrow. Now it's not worth the trouble.
Houston, Texas, the domain of President George W. Bush. For his return to American soil, Alain tried a game of poker with an online casino to climb One Houston Center. The adventure quickly came to a halt. The local press revealed the information, and he was caught a few seconds before he could start to climb.
Relax. Relax. Put your hands on.
quest garnered a lot of press for an unexpected reason. The police searched Alain and found 2 tablets of Herbanyl, a vasodilator that he takes before spending time in one of the toughest jails in the world, says Alain.
Well, I like these people because they're having a spirit of gambling. They think that the life is a game, and I think that for me, life is a game as well.
All these police officers are out here because of you, spending our taxpayer money.
Listen, I haven't committed any crime. Nothing.
But you're going to climb this building.
What I have done?
You're going to climb this building.
No. Have you seen I'm going to climb the building? I haven't done anything.
With no prescription on him, he was sentenced for drug possession and had to pay a $1,500 fine. From then on, the world press picked up this information and associated Alain with drugs. When he returned to France, Alain was furious at the allegations made in the press and decided to organize 2 climbs in Paris to deny the charges and to explain himself.
I wanted to show the entire world that it wasn't drugs, so I decided to make a climb to support my denial. Otherwise, I would have had to write to all the press editors. It was easier to make a statement of denial by climbing. I believe that I have made a contribution to the sport of climbing. But I think it's the fact that I've been arrested all over the world that has contributed to the image of Alain Robert, the French Spiderman.
Spiderman, Spiderman does whatever a spider can.
I'm Spiderman!
Spiderman!
I'd like to climb everything like Spiderman!
Bien, nos ha dicho que él practica una modalidad que se llama climb solo, es decir, es escalar solo con sus manos, sin ningún tipo de herramientas.
It was in Caracas, Venezuela in 2002 during a live TV show before 10 million viewers that the image of Spider-Man really stuck to him. He climbed the tallest building in the city, disguised as a superhero for the launch of the first of the Spider-Man series of films.
Okay, he told me that he used the technique of solo climbing, meaning that he climbs only with his hands. The climb. We're seeing Spider-Man's first steps. The Frenchman Alain Robert as he starts his climb with a lot of assurance. He stretched briefly and limbered up before his ascent. He has a chalk bag attached to his back. This Central Park tower has 69 floors. We're watching him. There's a lot of tension, a lot of suspense. It's really very moving. This building is nearly 750 feet tall. We must say that there are several possibilities for pauses during the course of this very moving, tense climb that you're watching exclusively on Super Sensational Saturday. It couldn't be otherwise. We've set up special lights so that we can observe the entire journey, the whole course. In any case, Alain Robert is concentrating very hard. He's very concentrated. Thank you very much, Daniel Sarcos. We're at the top of the tower, at the summit of the Central Park Tower. Alain Robert is about to complete his goal. He's nearly arrived at the 69th level, reaching the tower's 750 feet. Exactly, Daniel Sarcos. Spider-Man is coming. We see his silhouette. He raises his hands and greets the public. In this moment of ultimate celebration, we can let go of our fears, because all along this course, we have felt the tension, the emotion, the suspense of the ascension of this tower, the tallest building in Caracas. Applause.
This climb will leave Alain with a memorable souvenir, his encounter with the Venezuelan people who fell under the spell of the exploits of the French Spiderman.
I've often felt fear, but so what? That means everything and nothing. You feel afraid and it lasts a tenth of a second, it lasts a second, and then you pull yourself together. Because in any case, what is greater than fear? The desire to live. So I immediately snap back to being this warrior, this person who absolutely wants to go to the top.
So I don't promise you that I will do it because headache.
It's in Slovakia during a mountain film festival that Alain experienced his most difficult climb and one of his most picturesque adventures.
Poprad is a tiny 15-floor building, about 165 feet high, but it's very difficult. I think it may be the most difficult building I've climbed so far. It was funny because there was no one waiting for me at the top, and so I had to figure out a way to enter the building. I didn't realize that it was a bank. When I got back down to the first floor, the sirens went off and security came running. And when I finally got outside, the police weren't happy. But the people were angry that they had arrested me. It wasn't really a bank robbery, but it's true that it was subject to interpretation.
C'est pas réellement un braquage de banque, mais bon, c'est vrai que ça pourrait y ressembler. La réaction des gens, elle a été très
simple. The people's reaction was very simple. They didn't see it as Alain Robert who broke into a bank, but as Alain Robert who climbed a building, who finally found a way to get down by going through the interior, not as a bank robber. So there was a moment of confusion between the reaction of the public, the reaction of the police, and then me, who suddenly found myself seized by the security people inside the bank.
The falls that he took cliff climbing could have calmed him forever. I think they handicapped him a little, hurt him a little. I think that he has an arm that doesn't extend properly. He has things that handicap him. Apparently, he's never falling during a solo climb. He's always fallen when he had ropes. Mistakes, certainly, but with the ropes.
Of the billions of people who have walked this earth, there are very few who are unique, but he is one of them.
Unique, Alain is, without a doubt. But what is unique about Spider-Man is his capacity to question our societies concerning the place of security in our lives, which is, to an extent, the degree of our confidence in ourselves.
You feel much more alive when you're in danger. And when you've succeeded, when you're on top, you feel... You have the impression of being reborn. You have the feeling of starting a new life.
Et finalement, l'escalade,
in the end, climbing is the story of my life.
c'est l'histoire de ma vie.